Insert perfect joke here. Hey guys, MasakoX here. Now before we begin, I am happy to announce that I now have a Discord server. Check out the Masa Cave by using the link below in the description. And I will also add a pinned comment for those people who don't like opening descriptions. Hope to see you there. Now today's topic is probably one of the most requested topics I've had ever since I started doing these discussions. Many times in past videos, and before then when I was doing my Q&A videos like in the comment section, I kept getting asked, oh, you like Perfect Cell so much, Masako, why don't you talk about him then? You keep going on about how much you think he's great, then do a video on it, okay? I think now is the absolute best time to do so. To be fair, I have said many times that Cell is one of my favourite villains in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z particularly. Sit back and I'm going to talk about why I think Perfect Cell is so great, as well as some more insight into the character in general. First off though, I love Cell because he is so handsome. Now we've got the obligatory DBZA reference out of the way, let's get into why I really like Cell. I like what he stands for. The crescendo. Everything that had come before our heroes had been encapsulated into one single villain, and it was up to the Z-Warriors to actually best him. What an awesome way to end things. All of that symbolism packaged into one intimidating yet charismatic form. Yet despite this, Toriyama hadn't originally intended for Cell to be the main villain of this arc. Cell was the result of micromanagement. Oh, how I love that word. One of Toriyama's editors, Kazuhiko Torishima, had pestered him to make a better villain design for this arc. Numbers 19 and 20, or Dr. Gero, were meant to be the villains. Dr. Gero was meant to be the big bad. Called them a geezer and a fatso. Right. As a result, Toriyama created numbers 17 and 18, something a little bit more intimidating and something that kids could relate to. But Torishima's response to that? Oh, they're just some brats. Breathe, Toriyama, breathe. As you can imagine, there was a lot of frustration brewing here. Toriyama felt that numbers 19 and 20 were good enough, and if he had his own way, he would just kept it at that. And even when Cell became a thing, Toriyama was okay with keeping him in his first and then second forms. He didn't really feel the need to transition to all these different transformations at first. But then Toriyama's next editor, Yu Kondo, stepped in and insisted that Cell transformed. Twice. First he looked too creepy, then he looked too stupid. Hurry up and make him into his perfect form already, said Kondo. Toriyama is good with coming up with a story on the fly, but sometimes it's worth poking him a little bit to truly get his full potential out onto paper. Toriyama's favourite form of Cell, you ask? Well, it was his second form. He wanted him to play a more active role in the show because he looked quite tough and badass, something that could really strike fear into the hearts of our heroes. But it wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. Second form Cell was around for 7 to 8 episodes, far less than his previous or subsequent forms. So how did Toriyama come up with the design for Perfect Cell then? Well, his initial design cues were very close to home. Freeza, an evolution from small and shouty to big and menacing to sleek and sophisticated. Only this time, Cell was based around insects instead of freaky aliens or land sharks. Toriyama elaborates on this trend in the Super History Book of Dragon Ball, in which he states, "It all started with Freeza. I didn't start out with any plans to have him transform, of course, but midway through I thought it might be cool to make it look like a bluff and then have him transform for real. I'm in the habit of giving characters progressively more complex and tough-looking forms, then finally making them really sleek. After all, it's awful drawing them once they get all complex. Complex guys are terrible when you have to draw them for weeks on end. Cell was a ton of work with those darn spots of his. Cell was sleeker, just like Freeza, only with spots, which has bugged Toriyama to this very day. Actually, if you look at some early designs of Cell, you can see the similarity to Freeza was really obvious at first, but eventually evolved into what we have now. He is a biologically engineered artificial lifeform composed of the DNA of the majority of the main cast, including some of its enemies like Vegeta and Freeza. Some of their mannerisms are evident in his own personality, and these traits become even more evident when he attains his perfect form. It's like a refinement, you might say. Toriyama explains his thought process briefly in the Dragon Ball Full Color Manga Volume 4. In it, he mentions that Cell's basic design was thought up by Gero as the ultimate artificial human, while Gero was in a good mood due to successfully completing number 19. The computer redesigned the weak parts of the original personality, adding in the personalities of various different characters to make him the perfect weapon. Cell demonstrates this with using the attacks of our heroes, like the Kamehameha, the Tri-Beam, the Special Beam Cannon, the Solar Flare, even Frieza's Death Beam's in there. Even the Zenkai boost of the Saiyans is in there towards the end of the arc. And most importantly, the ability to regenerate thanks to Piccolo. That's why I love him so much. He has everything that our heroes have, and then some. How do you combat that? Well, the only way you can in Dragon Ball. Hit them really, really, really hard, enough to vaporize them to smithereens. I remember that moment when Cell came back from the dead after Goku sacrificed himself. It was so terrifying. I was left slack-jawed in amazement and fear. I know it's a show meant for children and young adults, but that's what I felt like at the time because I was a kid. Goku died in vain. Cell was back. I didn't know what to think. I was blown away at the sight of Cell's sheer power, frustrated at Gohan's arrogance, and just the whole situation was just topsy-turvy. That was a lot to process on the first viewing, and I can imagine you were feeling the same way. So where does Cell stand in the franchise today? Well, he's pretty much front and center alongside Freeza in terms of the biggest, baddest villains. In fact, many times in the show and the manga, Cell and Freeza have actually been shown together quite frequently. They're almost best buds. Or maybe more. His other forms are shown sometimes in manga and merchandise, but this one is the most marketable. You think that this is the be-all and end-all of Cell's designs today? No, there have actually been a couple permutations since the show ended, and continued with Super. First off, there's a fusion of Freeza and Cell in the game Dragon Ball Fusions. Yeah, they can fuse, and that creates Cellza. I like it. Not because I just like the colour purple or anything, but I just think that the colour of Frieza's white skin actually lends itself to Cell's design, and it really comes together quite harmoniously. The purple and the black spots and just the more pointedness of Cell's design is just so interesting. Then we have Cell X from Dragon Ball Heroes, and that looks, whoa. Whoa. Well, in terms of evolution, it's certainly a step forward and a step back. You stick a Dark Dragon Ball in there and you get that. Whoa. He looks much more like an insect here, especially with that ass though. I mean, you gotta do something to make Cell look more powerful other than make him shinier, because this design is pretty much perfect. Sorry. You have to make him look more aggressive and bug-like, in which to make something truly fearful for our heroes to face after this. So going back to my original point, does Cell deserve to be called a perfect villain? Well, in my mind, yes. His place in the story works perfectly when it comes to the evolution of Gohan's character. Gohan has to fight the embodiment of everything that's come before. If he fails, then all that's happened, all that has been achieved, and all the past victories will have counted for nothing. Winning this final battle will cap off a truly mystical adventure which has inspired millions and millions of people across the world. It would be such a poetic ending to proceedings. A true rites of passage and a passing of the torch from Goku to Gohan. It's kind of a shame that various outside pressures made it so that means the show and manga had to continue. It's safe to say that Toriyama was feeling really burnt out during the Cell arc. In fact, he was sort of feeling burnt out during the Freeza arc. At some points he really didn't know what he could do with the show. Let's go back to the Super History book and see what was up with Toriyama. The artificial human and Cell story arc was pretty rough. I guess you could say I did all I could with Freeza, so I was burned out and figured I couldn't pull off a better battle than that. I thought, do I really have to keep going? Even when Cell ended, it still didn't feel like it could end. So before the Buu story arc began, I said, once this next thing wraps up, I want it to end no matter what. Because I thought there was no way for any stronger guys to pop up, or for Goku to get any stronger than he already was. So my starting point for the Buu arc was, this is the end, so I'm going to draw whatever I want. I always liked dumb gags, so I made things comical, with the Great Saiyaman and Gotenks and whatnot. Wow, the Cell arc actually broke Toriyama. After that, his editors pretty much just let him run the show. So if you felt that the Buu arc felt a little odd in comparison to the older arcs, then the quote I just read might be a reason why. Toriyama didn't have a hand on his shoulder to temper him. He could just go to town. We got to see Toriyama's humor and style in full force. It was unadulterated. there for us all to see, and since we're actually reading a Toriyama manga, to get all Toriyama all the time means we get plenty of bang for our buck. But sometimes unfiltered stories don't necessarily make the best stories. Perhaps he needed some restriction. Sometimes rules and guidelines produce the best kind of content. Speaking as a content creator, I can truly attest to that. It makes creators think outside the box. I don't actually like having total freedom when it comes to projects. I need some kind of reference point. If I'm just left to my own devices to do whatever I want, I kind of struggle because you just think, where do I start? I guess after 10 years of editorial control, I think he was more than happy to just go nuts. So perhaps Cell was the last well-rounded villain of Dragon Ball, or at least up to Z. If he is, then what a way to do it! It was so powerful and mesmerizing to witness, it felt like an honor. Now, I'm not saying that everything past Cell was trash, of course it wasn't. I truly dug the rest of Dragon Ball, and the Buu Saga was plenty of fun. But when it comes to the story, the Buu Saga felt a little bit out of control when you look back on the previous arcs, and actually in some of Super. I just find post-Cell Dragon Ball to be rather different. But one thing you have to understand on the internet is that different does not equal bad. Right, now is the time to get you guys involved out there. So what do you guys think? Do you think Cell is the best villain of Dragon Ball? Do you think there could have been anything done to improve his character, if at all? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later.